I barely slept after the knock. Every creak of the floorboards, every hum from the radiator, made me jump. I kept the lights on until dawn, sitting in the living room with a kitchen knife clutched in my lap like it could stop the kind of men Marco Vega sent. When the first sunlight slipped through the blinds, I felt both relief and dread. Daylight didn't erase the fact that someone had been outside my door. Someone who wanted me scared. It worked. By mid-morning, I was pacing the apartment, trying to convince myself to eat, shower, breathe like a normal person. My phone buzzed on the counter. Francis. I nearly threw it across the room. The last thing I wanted was to hear his voice. But something in me, the part still haunted by the knock, knew I had to pick up. Don't hang up, he said the second I answered. His voice was hoarse, urgent. Please, Jess. Just listen. You've got a lot of nerve, I snapped. You sent Marco to my door? What? No. Jesus, Jessica, if he's at your place, you're in danger. You don't understand how he operates. I laughed bitterly. You think I don't understand? I heard you at that bar, Francis. I know you signed everything over to him. It wasn't supposed to go that far. His words tumbled out fast, desperate. It started as a loan. Just a loan to cover the debts. He wanted collateral. The apartment was supposed to be temporary, Jess, I swear. But when Kate got involved, my stomach turned. Don't you dare put this on her. You were already planning to run. He didn't argue. That silence told me everything. Listen to me, Francis said, lowering his voice like he thought Marco was listening in. If you go to the police again, he'll find out. He always finds out. And when he does, it won't be just your name on the line. It'll be mine, Kate's. Maybe even your mom's. Don't you dare bring my family into this. Then be smart, he begged. Leave the city. Tonight. Don't pack much, don't tell anyone. Just go. I gripped the phone tighter, fury burning through my fear. You want me to disappear so Marco can take my home, my life, without a fight? No. I'm done running. You made this mess, Francis. You clean it up. His voice cracked. Jess, if you stay, he'll kill you. I hung up. Valerie came over that afternoon, finding me in the same spot on the couch, staring at the door like it might open on its own. What happened? She asked immediately. I told her about the knock. About Francis's call. About his warning. She sat beside me, her expression grim but steady. Then he's scared too. That's good. It means Marco doesn't trust him either. Good. I shot back, my voice rising. How's that good? I'm the one with the target on my back. Valerie grabbed my hands. Because scared men make mistakes. Francis is cracking. Marco's watching him. That gives us an opening. You don't fight Marco head-on. You use his paranoia against him. Her calmness cut through my panic, but only barely. Valerie, what if Francis is right? What if I don't survive this? She held my gaze. Then you make damn sure that if Marco takes you down, he goes down with you. Her words were like steel, hard, cold, unyielding. And terrifyingly, they made sense. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I pulled every blind shut, checked the locks 3 times, left the television on for noise. At 11:45, my phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. Nice apartment. Be a shame if something happened to it. Asterisk asterisk. My blood froze. I showed it to Valerie, who swore and started pacing. It's him. He's tightening the screws. Trying to scare you into running. Well, it's working, I whispered. But underneath the fear, something else sparked, anger. If Marco wanted me broken, he'd have to do more than knock and send text messages. And maybe, just maybe, I could use that. I didn't sleep after that text. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured Marco standing in the shadows outside, watching, waiting. By morning, my nerves were stretched so thin that even the coffee machine's hiss made me flinch. Valerie had crashed on the couch, insisting she wouldn't leave me alone. She looked as tired as I felt, her hair messy, eyes puffy, but her presence kept me from completely unraveling. Don't let him see you scared, she said, sipping her coffee. That's what men like Marco feed on. Fear. You give him nothing, Jess. Nothing. Easier said than done. I spent half the day jumping at shadows, the other half scrolling through the text, wondering if replying would make things better or worse. Finally, I decided on silence. If Marco wanted me rattled, I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of a response. But that didn't mean I was going to sit still. By mid-afternoon, I had a plan. Well, the start of one. If Francis was desperate enough to call me, desperate enough to warn me, maybe I could use him. He was still tangled up in Marco's scheme, but he was also vulnerable. And vulnerable men slip. Valerie didn't like it. You want to work with Francis? The same man who forged your name and tried to vanish with your sister. I don't trust him, I said quickly. But he knows Marco. He knows how he operates. That makes him useful. Valerie shook her head, muttering something about me being insane. But I could tell she saw the sense in it, even if she hated the idea. I didn't have to wait long to test it. At dusk, a knock came at the door. Not Marco's slow, deliberate knock. This was frantic, uneven, panicked. I peeked through the peephole and nearly cursed. Francis. I yanked the door open, keeping the chain on. He looked terrible. His hair was uncombed, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. For the first time, I saw real fear in his face, and not the performative kind he used to manipulate me. Jessica, he whispered, glancing over his shoulder. Let me in. Please. He knows I talked to you. I hesitated, my stomach twisting. Behind me, Valerie was already on her feet. Don't you dare, Jess. He's poison. Francis pressed closer to the door. I'm not here to fight. I'm not here to trick you. Marco thinks I'm weak, and he's right. I can't stand up to him alone. But you? You've got something he wants. And that makes you more powerful than either of us. I studied his face, looking for the lies I knew so well. But all I saw was a man cornered, drowning, begging for a hand. Against every instinct, I undid the chain. He rushed inside, pulling the door shut behind him. Valerie crossed her arms, glaring like she was ready to throw him out herself. Start talking, I snapped. Why are you really here? Francis ran a hand through his hair, pacing like a caged animal. Because Marco doesn't trust me anymore. He thinks I can't handle you. He wants me out of the way. His voice cracked. I think he's planning to make me disappear. Valerie scoffed. You reap what you sow. Francis ignored her, turning to me. Jess, I know I don't deserve it, but you're the only one who can stop him. Those documents, the recording, you still have them, right? I hesitated. Why? Because if Marco doesn't get what he wants soon, he'll come for both of us. But if we play it right, if we feed him just enough to keep him busy, we can buy time. Time for you to take him down legally. I stared at him, my pulse hammering. Was this another ploy? Or was he truly that desperate? Valerie stepped between us. You can't trust him, Jess. He'll sell you out the second Marco waves $1 in his face. Francis shook his head wildly. No, not this time. I swear it. His voice dropped to a whisper. Because if Marco kills me, who else do I have but you? The room went still. I wanted to scream, to throw him out, to erase the sight of his pleading eyes. But part of me, God help me, saw the truth in his fear. For the first time, Francis needed me more than I needed him. And that gave me leverage. That night, as Francis crashed on the floor by the couch, Valerie pulled me into the kitchen. This is a mistake, she hissed. He's going to drag you down with him. Or, I whispered back, he's going to give me the one thing I need, Marco's weakness. Valerie shook her head like she couldn't believe me. But I saw the flicker in her eyes, the tiny flame of hope that maybe, just maybe, Francis's fear could be the weapon we'd been waiting for. I barely slept that night. Francis lay on the floor like a restless shadow, muttering in his sleep, jerking awake at every sound. Valerie dozed on the couch, one arm tucked under her head, but even in sleep her body stayed rigid, ready to spring. And me? I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind a storm. I hated Francis. Hated him for what he'd done, for the betrayal, the lies, the mess he'd dragged me into. But hate didn't erase the truth. He was terrified of Marco, and terrified men break in useful ways. By sunrise, I had made my decision. If Francis wanted to survive, he'd help me. And if he tried to play me again, I'd make sure Marco knew exactly how expendable he was. Francis looked like death warmed over when I shoved a cup of coffee in his hands. "Drink it," I said. "You're no good to me half dead." He stared at me like he couldn't tell if I was joking. "So, you believe me?" "I believe you're scared enough to tell me the truth," I said flatly. "Which means you're useful." "For now." Valerie shot me a look but kept her mouth shut. Francis nodded, swallowing hard. "What do you want me to do?" "Start talking," I demanded. "How does Marco operate? Who does he trust? Where does he meet his people? Every detail matters." Francis rubbed his temples, trying to gather himself. "Marco doesn't trust anyone completely. He rotates his meeting spots, bars, parking lots, sometimes even hotel lobbies. Always public enough to blend in, but noisy enough to keep anyone from eavesdropping. And he doesn't handle the money himself. He uses runners." I leaned forward. "Names. Give me names." He hesitated, then shook his head. "I don't know most of them. Marco keeps things compartmentalized." But his voice dropped. "There's one guy. Rico. He's the middleman. If you find Rico, you find Marco's weak spot." I filed the name away, my mind already racing. Just when I started to think Francis might actually be useful, my phone buzzed. A no number again. "Bring Francis tonight. Midnight. Corner of 12th and Maple. Don't be late." My stomach flipped. "Marco." Francis saw the text over my shoulder. His face drained of color. "He knows. He always knows." Valerie cursed under her breath. "It's a trap." "Of course it's a trap," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "But it's also an opportunity." Francis shook his head violently. "You don't get it, Jess. He's testing me. If I don't show up, I'm dead. If I do show up and you're there, you're dead too." Valerie turned to me. "So what do we do?" The room went quiet. I stared at the text, my mind spinning. If Marco wanted Francis to bring me, it meant I wasn't just a nuisance anymore. I was part of the game. He wanted to see me up close. To measure me. Maybe to break me. The thought terrified me. But it also lit something else inside me. If Marco thought I'd just walk into his test and fold, he didn't know me at all. By late afternoon, Francis was pacing like a caged animal. "We can't go," he kept muttering. "We can't go, we can't go." I finally snapped. "Then stay here and hide under the bed." "But I'm going." His head whipped toward me. "Are you insane?" "He'll kill you." Or, I said, keeping my voice steady, "He'll underestimate me. And that's worse for him." Valerie stood, arms crossed, her face set. "If you're going, Jess, you're not going alone. We prepare. We record. We find leverage." Francis groaned, running his hands through his hair. "You don't understand. He'll pat you down. He'll check everything. If he even suspects you're wired." "Then we hide it better," Valerie cut in. "And we stay one step ahead." The tension between them crackled like electricity. And I stood in the middle, caught between Francis's fear and Valerie's resolve. But deep down, I knew the truth. Midnight wasn't just Marco's test. It was mine. When the clock crept past 11, we were ready. Or as ready as we'd ever be. Valerie slipped me a tiny recorder, small enough to hide in the lining of my coat. Francis looked like he was walking to his own funeral, pale and trembling, but he didn't argue anymore. As we left the apartment, the city lights flickered in the distance, casting long shadows across the street. I pulled my coat tighter, the recorder pressing lightly against my side like a secret heartbeat. Every step closer to 12th and Maple felt like stepping into quicksand. By the time we turned the corner, my pulse was a drum in my ears. And there he was, Marco Vega, leaning against a black car under the streetlight, smoke curling from a cigarette, eyes locked on me like he'd been waiting his whole life for this moment. The first thing I noticed wasn't Marco himself. It was the silence. The corner of 12th and Maple was never this quiet. Usually, even at midnight, you'd hear the occasional car, the thrum of a bus a few blocks over, someone arguing in the distance. But tonight, the air felt pressed down heavy, like the city itself was holding its breath. Then I saw them. Two men standing just outside the circle of streetlight glow. Not moving, not speaking. Just watching. Marco's shadows. My mouth went dry. Valerie's hand brushed mine. Light, steady. A reminder not to crumble. Francis lagged half a step behind, his breathing shallow, his fear practically radiating off him. Marco flicked the cigarette into the gutter and crushed it under his shoe. Jessica. His voice was smooth, almost polite, but it carried an edge sharp enough to cut glass. And Valerie too. How considerate. Valerie stiffened beside me but stayed quiet. Marco's eyes shifted to Francis. You brought them. I wasn't sure you'd have the spine. He tilted his head, studying Francis like a butcher eyeing a piece of meat. Maybe you're not as useless as I thought. Francis swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing like he was trying not to choke. I forced myself to step forward, my legs shaking but my voice steady. What do you want, Marco? He smiled. Not warm, not genuine, just a baring of teeth. Straight to business. I like that. He motioned toward the car. Get in. All of you. Every instinct screamed at me to run. But instead, I moved. Valerie followed without hesitation, though I caught the flicker of warning in her eyes. Francis stumbled in last, his hands trembling. Inside the car, the air smelled of leather and stale smoke. Marco slid in beside us, close enough that I could see the faint scar cutting through his eyebrow. He didn't waste time. Here's the thing. I don't like chaos. I don't like surprises. And lately, Jessica, his gaze locked on mine. You've been a surprise. My pulse hammered in my ears, but I met his stare. I'm not trying to surprise anyone. I just want my life back. Marco chuckled low, shaking his head. Your life? Jessica, you married into this. You tied yourself to Francis, and Francis tied himself to me. There's no getting out clean. I felt Valerie's hand brush my knee under the dark interior, grounding me. What if Francis tied himself to the wrong man? I asked carefully. What if he dragged me down for nothing? Marco's expression shifted, the smile fading, curiosity sparking in his eyes. Go on. Francis looked like he might faint. Just don't. Shut up, Marco snapped without looking at him. The silence stretched. Then Marco leaned in close, so close I could smell the smoke on his breath. You're smart. Smarter than him, at least. But smarts don't keep you alive. Loyalty does. So I'm giving you both a choice. He held up 2 fingers. 1, you keep quiet. You stop digging. Stop asking questions. Stop waving around those little documents you think make you powerful. You stay in line and maybe asterisk. I let you walk away. He lowered 1 finger. 2, you keep pushing. And I bury you. Francis whimpered softly, his head dropping into his hands. Valerie sat still, her face like stone, but I could feel the tension humming through her. I swallowed hard. And if I chose option 3? Marco's eyes narrowed. There is no option 3. But I leaned in, refusing to flinch. There is if I make one. The car went silent. Even the men outside seemed to hold still. For a heartbeat, I thought Marco might snap my neck right there. Then slowly, he smiled again. This time wider, darker. You've got fire, Jessica. I'll admit, I wasn't expecting that. He leaned back, tapping his fingers on his knee. But fire burns out fast. And when it does, all that's left is ash. He rapped twice on the window. The door unlocked. Go home. Think carefully about which future you want. Because next time we meet, there won't be choices. We slid out of the car in silence, the night air cold against my skin. Marco's men melted back into the shadows as the engine roared to life. The black car pulled away, taillights glowing like eyes in the dark, until it disappeared around the corner. Francis collapsed against the nearest wall, gasping. Valerie grabbed my arm, her grip almost bruising. Jess, what the hell was that? She hissed. You just challenged him to his face. I exhaled, my chest tight. I had to. If I acted scared, we'd already be dead. Francis shook his head violently. You don't understand. He's not bluffing. He'll kill us. Maybe, I said, my voice firmer than I felt. Or maybe I just made him underestimate me in a way we can use. Because deep down, I knew one thing. Marco Vega didn't think I had the courage to go against him. And that was going to be his biggest mistake. The ride back to the apartment was dead silent. Francis sat slumped in the back seat, his forehead pressed against the window, mumbling under his breath like he was reciting a prayer. Valerie drove, her knuckles white against the steering wheel, jaw clenched so tight I thought her teeth might crack. And me? I stared straight ahead, replaying Marco's smile over and over in my mind. That smile hadn't been empty. It hadn't been anger either. It was curiosity. Marco Vega had seen something in me he hadn't expected, and now the question was whether that was my ticket to survival or my death sentence. When we finally made it upstairs, Francis collapsed on the couch, burying his face in his hands. "It's over," he muttered. "We're dead. You don't talk to Marco that way and live. You don't bargain with him. You don't." "Francis," I snapped, cutting him off. My voice came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't care. "If you're too scared to fight, fine. Stay out of the way. But I'm not crawling into a hole and waiting for him to decide when it's my time." Valerie dropped her keys onto the counter and turned toward me. "She's right. If Marco's giving us breathing room, even for a few days, we use it. We build leverage." Francis lifted his head, his eyes bloodshot. "Leverage? Against Marco Vega? You don't get it. You can't win." I crouched down in front of him, forcing him to meet my gaze. "Then explain something to me. If Marco's untouchable, why hasn't he killed you yet? Why does he bother with all these games?" Francis froze, like the thought had never crossed his mind. "Because," I continued, "even Marco Vega has weaknesses. And if we find them, we don't just survive, we end this." Valerie leaned against the counter, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "You've got fire, Jess. But fire without direction burns everything. So let's talk strategy." She pulled a notebook from her bag and flipped it open. "We know 3 things. 1. Marco uses middlemen. Rico especially. 2. He rotates his meeting spots. Always public. That means there are patterns, even if Francis hasn't noticed them. And 3. He's not afraid of violence, but he prefers control. Which means if we find something that threatens his control, we can use it." I nodded slowly, my chest tightening with equal parts fear and determination. "So we start with Rico." Francis groaned. "You're insane. Rico's worse than Marco. He's the one who—" He stopped abruptly, his face paling. Valerie's eyes narrowed. "The one who what?" Francis hesitated, then whispered, "He's the one who cleans up the messes. If Marco orders it, Rico's the one who makes sure no one ever finds a body." My stomach churned, but I forced myself to stay steady. "Which means if Rico's the cleaner, he also knows where the dirt is buried. Literally and figuratively." Valerie gave me the faintest smile. "Exactly. We stayed up until dawn, sketching out possibilities." Valerie suggested staking out Marco's meeting places. Francis argued it was suicide. I pushed for finding Rico, cornering him somehow. Francis nearly panicked at the idea. But through the bickering, one thing became clear. Francis knew more than he admitted. Every time we pressed, he'd flinch, deflect, or go silent. Finally, I slammed my hand on the table. "Enough. If you want to live, Francis, you're going to start talking. No more half-truths. No more stalling." He stared at me, breathing hard, his face pale. Then slowly he whispered, "There's something. Something I never told Marco. If he knew, I'd be dead already." The room went still. "What is it?" I demanded. Francis licked his lips, his hands trembling. "Rico keeps records. Not just names, transactions, locations, amounts. He doesn't trust Marco completely, so he keeps his own ledger. I saw it once, months ago. Locked in a safe at one of the warehouses." Valerie leaned forward. "Which warehouse?" Francis hesitated, then whispered, "The one by the river. Old shipping yard. Building 14. My heart pounded. A ledger. Proof. If we could get our hands on it, we wouldn't just have leverage. We'd have the weapon to destroy Marco. Ugh. The sun was bleeding orange through the blinds when I finally collapsed into bed, exhaustion pulling at every muscle. But even as I drifted off, one thought kept echoing in my mind. We had a path forward now. Dangerous, reckless, maybe even impossible. But for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like prey. For the first time, I felt like we might actually have a shot at turning the tables. And God help Marco Vega if we did.